We joke because it's like if we just remove the word Bitcoin and they can like remove their biases and remove their preconceived notions and just change that to some other like name and say like, hey, we got this asset with these returns, and this uncorrelated profile.
I've heard
what do
of
you think?
people doing that. I've heard anecdotal reports of people sending someone a tear sheet saying, what do you think of this hedge fund? And it just had the stats. And everyone said, absolutely. I've never seen anything like it.
It's like, I'm in.
This is amazing. And then they say, well, it's not a hedge fund, it's Bitcoin. If I could get away with that on the compliance side, I would maybe try that, but probably best I don't.
Yeah, it's a hedge fund. It doesn't have, annual fees either. So yeah, it's we joke about that, but what are some of the like replies you get when you try to invert that? Like what's still the holdup you get with people? Is it really just a career risk, or is there some, common misconceptions that you come across still today that you have to commonly debunk? Just curious.
Yeah, it varies. One clear trend that I have noticed is the misconceptions continually remain, but they get more and more sophisticated. And so this tells me that there's some people who are just dead set against it, and they will say the latest FUD, the fear, uncertainty, doubt, the latest misconception, of the day, the du jour, like, well, it's too volatile, it's this, it's early things where it's not real, it's only used by computer nerds and dark web people and illicit things. Those have gone away, and now it's more to the, well, there's regulatory concerns, or there's this, or there's that. So there's some that are true, and we have a whole piece out on addressing the common misconceptions, and then also being honest and saying, here's what we think are the real risks. So they've gotten more sophisticated. Some of them truly believe it. Some of them I don't think truly believe it. They just want to be against it. But it varies over all firms. Some people want to do it, but they're still working through regulation and compliance. There's other people that just don't want to do it. I was at a conference a couple of months ago, and the person gave me it's not real. There's nothing backing it. I can't see it. I can't use it argument. Yeah. But then he went on to say that he was a big investor in fine art, and I can see the art and I can enjoy the art. And I said, well, you're obviously enjoying it, but you're talking about buying it and investing in it and holding it. And you said, you know the market really well and how much it's worth. So you're obviously ascribing some monetary premium to it, right? So why not just invest in something that has a pure monetary premium? There's no subjective value as to whether the art is good or bad or in vogue or out of vogue or something like that. I don't think I got through to him. Maybe I should have tried more of the attack. I've been thinking lately of what we just talked about with proof of work, where what's backing it is true energy that's been expended. Maybe that's a better tactic. I'm not sure, but it's still a lot of the same stuff, unfortunately. But it just takes time for these things to change in people's minds and for kind of the collective perception of it to change as well.
Maybe you got to get that guy one of those old Cassius coins, those physical Bitcoins. That'd be perfect for him.
You can hold that, right?
Yeah. I go back and forth. I mean, to me personally, the backed by energy, I actually think Bitcoin's kind of backed by its monetary properties is the way I think I believe it. Like I frame that, like backed by energy is more about like the security and preventing like 51% attack. But in terms of actual Bitcoin's value, it's monetary properties, similar to gold's monetary premium, right? I mean, Peter Schiff was just talking to my fiance on Fox News about this, talking about the intrinsic value. And he talks about the central banks buying gold. And I'm like, do you think they're not, buying it because they're all trying to get second jobs and open up a dental practice or something, like building electronics? No, they're buying it for its monetary properties. It's so silly. But then he says like, well, Bitcoin doesn't have an intrinsic value. Gold has industrial use cases. It's used in jewelry. But you really have to focus on the monetary properties. And that can be hard for people to kind of grasp, though, that idea that Bitcoin's value, what actually backs it is its superior monetary properties. And
so here's an interesting one I'd want to ask of you that I've been thinking of, and I don't have any answer to it. But in grad school, we had a monetary theory class, and Bitcoin was still very early back then. It was 2015. And they're making the point that all money through history started with something that had, quote, intrinsic value or was used. So usually a commodity. You start with commodity monies. And then it became a money that was redeemable in that commodity. And then as we've seen through history, they sever that link to the redeemability of it, as all countries have done. But the point was, it was always built on a foundation or bootstrapped off of that original utility, which is where I think people get this idea of even if they know and believe that gold is mostly a pure monetary thing, that little bit of utility somehow
That's how it
gives
started.
it a foundation. And never before in history have we had a monetary good just be launched as a pure monetary good. And I think that's correct. I don't think we ever have had that throughout history. So I'm wondering if that does change the narrative or perception, or just people have never encountered this, a pure monetary good launched out of nowhere, not bootstrapped to something else, not redeemable for something else. It was just purely a monetary thing that eventually emerged as a money. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
and I think that's actually an advantage too. I mean, if it's actually going to function as money, you don't have any distortion in the price of money itself if it's being used for other use cases. It's a pure, 100% monetary premium, and so it has the information that you need, which is to coordinate price signals and facilitate trade in the economy between individuals. And so, like, to me, it's actually, if you go one step further, it's actually an advantage that Bitcoin has, that it's not used for any other kind of industrial use case except to function as money itself.
I think on paper, I completely agree. It's an advantage. It's just pure money, and it's got all the best qualities. But for the adoption part of it, that's what makes it harder for people for whatever reason. They just can't trace the linearity back to something else.
Yeah, no, and I can't remember specifically. I would have to go back to my notes, but I don't know if you read Lynn Alden's book, Broken Money, but
We
she
did.
goes into that, like the history of like the different theories of money. And I remember those early chapters, but not well enough to speak on them right now. But I don't know. Have you read that book? Like, I'm just reminded of it. I was like, I know she talked about this. I
Yeah,
know.
that was the last book we read on the research team here. We do
Oh,
kind of a
cool.
book club, book reading. So we read that, we worked through that one. And yeah, she does go through that. And of course, we talked about the debate of whether early money was always emergent out of commodity,
Yes, I remember.
like
Yeah, that's
Menger's
right.
theory, origins of money, or whether
Yes,
it came out of
yeah.
a
Yep.
credit-based system. And it's interesting historically to think about this, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, we're here now. What are we going to do with this now?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I did learn a little bit more about the other side of the argument from Lynn's book. It had a little bit more logic to it than I originally thought. I'll admit that. But yeah. Anyway, everyone should read Broken Money. I think it's a fantastic book, and I hope you enjoyed it too.